this is just going to be a bit of a walkthrough to our new sandbox because there's been a lot of changes in the last little while. And I wanted to have a recorded session where we kind of showed what's expected behavior of the sandbox and maybe introduce some people through it to what Islandora can do. So our agenda, first I'm going to set some groundwork, build a bit of a context around why I'm talking about this today, and then talk about both the evaluator experience, which is like the prime goal of any sandbox, and also the developer experience, because it's fairly similar in some ways. Okay, so back like last year, we had two sandboxes. There was future.islandora.ca, which held the Drupal 9 Islandora, and the sandbox.islandora.ca was legacy. Now we've gotten rid of the legacy sandbox and we just have sandbox.islandora.ca is the only one. It runs Drupal 9. And if you go to future.islandora.ca, that'll redirect you to it. So as a sandbox, we want it to be there just so anybody can pop in at any time and take a look at what is going on and what kind of things it can do. So hopefully it should be intuitive and explicit about what it is it's doing. And it should really just work. So we want to see something kind of seamless. Before I go too far, here is a link to the presentation by Nat, Alexander, and Kirsta that was at the end of the sprint last year and covered a lot, including some like an overview of the things I'm going to go through today. So thank you for that presentation, and I'm sorry, I hope this doesn't reiterate too much. All right, so when you come up with a sandbox, you want to be able to ingest objects in it right away, see the derivatives happening, and look at things in different viewers. But all of that configuration is fairly simple to do in the front end, somewhat hard to do programmatically. And so we found that instead of just a bare bones system, it's easier if we can add a little bit of pizzazz to it. And the way that we're doing that right now is by layering some extra things on top of what would be considered a very out of the box standard basic Islandora. So when I talk about that standard basic Islandora, I'm talking about Islandora defaults, and that is included in the sandbox. Islandora defaults is a feature, a Drupal feature, which allows you to load in a bunch of configuration that we have kind of frozen in time to let you, have more convenient views, have some contexts that do certain things, and basically gets your site working in a way that you might want to build off of. But we'd add on top of that the Islandora install profile, and its full name is Islandora install profile demo, but we always call it the install profile. So that was developed by Born Digital. We are still in the last stages of merging it into Islandora core code. So there are open PRs there that I linked on BuildKit and ILDC. Hopefully those will go through soon. They've been in the works for a little while, but they're very, they overwrite a whole lot of different content. So it's a little bit scary putting those ones through. But if you go onto the right branch, you can still, you can use the Islandora install profile. So it was developed for ISLE. It doesn't need to be used with ISLE. There is in fact a way to use the playbook as with an option to install the install profile. And that works as well. So on top of that, UTSC adds some demo content, which is linked to in that previous slideshow that I had linked to. And there's also a daily refresh. So the sandbox should be getting not just a rebuild and a reload of content, but like an update of any software that is within the system. So Nat did a lot of this work in developing the install scripts and the content migration and stuff during the last sprint. And so I'm just going to give a big shout out to him. All right, so the evaluator experience. And now is when I, oops. Escape out of full text. Are you still seeing my screen? I think I saw a nod there. Okay, thank you. Great. So the front page of the Islandora Sandbox has some demo text to kind of explain itself to you. Great big search bar to show that you can search, and a big button that is kind of our like launch the repository to browse all collections. So I'm not sure if it looks like a repository going in, but definitely once you click that browse all collections button, the binary video collection, audio collection, lots of different collections that we have that are kind of sample, content type based collections, the way that we had them in Islandora 7. So this is really going towards a feature parity method of demonstrating that we are a repository. And that's okay, because I know that a lot of Islandora people are looking at Islandora 7 and the features that they had there to see if we're ready to move to 8. So before we go too much into what that is, I also wanted to mention, because it's kind of hard to see, at the bottom of this page is a link called login credentials. And that login credentials link goes to the wiki, where you can see the current password for the Islandora.ca sandbox. The username is admin. We no longer have a password as password. So unfortunately, you're gonna have to go there and then go to the login page. If you remember, it's /user, or there's that big login button at the bottom, and add admin, and there's your big password. So I'm actually going to log out, I think, because I want to demonstrate what you can see as a user to Islandora, not necessarily as a repository administrator. And so that brings us to these collections. What we're looking at is a view. It's a view that uses Solar, and it's a view that, because of the install profile, you can tweak its display. So you can use the grid view, which is a three-way grid. You can use the list view, and you can go 25 or 50 pages, results per page. And all of that stuff is added by the install profile. It's very powerful. Once you select something within this collection, it's a little bit more clear that you're looking at a view, a Solar view. There are lovely facets on the sideline. And usually if these audio things had thumbnails, then you would see a thumbnail there, but right now it's just very bare. So interview with Diane Hill or talking Drupal. And so for instance, as an audio object, what you're seeing is an audio HTML5 player. And if you scroll down, there's all the metadata surrounding that object. So this is the basic object view for any Islandora object, a player on top, a download button, also provided by the install profile, and then what the kinds of metadata including linked agents and other dates and other things that have been added to that module, to that object. Sorry. All right, so we have a new login process. Password isn't the password. Browsing up collections. Oh yes. So something that I wanted to mention about when you go to browse all collections is that these are not marked as in any way as being special top level collections. The only thing that differentiates these from, say, a collection within a collection is that the ones you're seeing here have no parent. The filter on this view selects things that are Islandora objects and that aren't a member of anything. So that's the way that we determine at the moment in this instance what becomes a top level collection. So if you create another collection and don't give it a parent, it can show up here. All right, are there any questions so far? Let's see. Everything's in the chat. All right. So in talking about which what should you expect to see when you're on a different object? We have a lot of players already lined up. There are other players, for example, Mirador, which can be used but haven't been set up to right now. So for instance, video will show with an HTML5 video player. And thanks to like standards, HTML5 things are like just going to work. I think it's a really great benefit that we don't no longer have that second requirement for like an extra JavaScript player or something like that. So audio we saw already. Images and large images both have they show up as you'd expect them to. Large images show up with a zoomable viewer. I believe. Let me just open this one. Yeah, so this is using OpenSeaDragon, and you can zoom in fairly close into this photograph. However, it doesn't have a very high resolution. It wasn't super high resolution to begin with, so that zooming feature isn't maybe as exciting as it could be. Compound objects. So we have a compound viewer within the install profile, and this is what it looks like. So there's a viewer, OpenSeaDragon, of a single image, and at the bottom is a little set of thumbnails that you can navigate to the other objects within that collection, within that compound. Compounds and collections are similar. They use the same member of protocol, same with collections. So it's only a matter of them being labeled as a compound object that causes them to have this particular viewer. And we do have another compound object which has 2 short stories in audio form. However, this one doesn't have that viewer as well because they don't have, I think because they don't have thumbnails. But I am potentially wrong about why they don't show up. The compound viewer works for images. So that was that 1910 Grand Parade. All right, newspapers have a fantastic date accordion. So if you have an object, if you have any sort of serial with like 10-digit date, you can plop it down with the newspaper viewer and you can see it can open up just like the newspaper viewer did for Islandora 7. And once you're on a newspaper, you can read through the different pages. This was a very P-themed UPEI in 1970 issue of the Cadre. So you can also see individual pages as a bit of a list here. And so this newspaper functionality is part of the Islandora install profile. I know that Nat was working on getting it extracted so that you could have kind of just install the Islandora newspaper module, so-called Islandora newspaper module, because right now I think it's still very hypothetical, and it would have it do this. But the install profile, a lot of the stuff is very baked in, so it's very difficult to extract it into different viewers or different vessels. We had a PDF viewer. I had marked it as broken. I'm still not sure why this is going on. We're seeing like the site within a iframe type thing.
Yeah, I was just looking at that, Rosie, and there's something about the way PDF.js library gets hooked in through Composer that's not set up right. We fixed this a couple times, so I think there was a fix and it got reverted. So I can go in and try to get that fixed, but it should be an easy fix.
That's excellent, thank you. Nonetheless, we do have the OCR available as a separate tab. So you can see the extracted text that came automatic, I believe automatically, when this content was loaded.
That's right.
All right. So we saw newspaper issues, books as well. There's a sample book in here called Wildflowers of Western Canada. And it isn't showing its viewer. That actually might be my fault. I was poking around there the other day and changed some of the contexts. So it's supposed to have a viewer here that shows all the pages of the book. I'm just seeing if the page, no, the page doesn't give us the thumbnails there at the bottom. Shoot. All right. If that was, my apologies. So in terms of things that don't have viewers yet, documents that are not PDF, so an Excel spreadsheet does not have a viewer. Zip files do not have viewers. I think that Kirsta and Nat are working on a viewer for zip files that can tell you, it can show you kind of the tree of what's inside it. And extra tab, yeah, we've seen the OCR tab. One more thing is that once you are logged in, there's an extra tab here in like the edit list tab list called parents. And this can show what things are a parent of. So there's already the children tab. Similarly, there's the parents tab, and this shows that this is a member of the binary collection. And you can edit the membership, I believe, within that. Yeah. So that is really cool. It appears on all nodes. That is including, oops, including something like the Islandora Sandbox page, which is not an Islandora object, but it still has the parents bar. So there's some tweaks that could be made to that. And search has, we have the search bar. So if I search for, you can do multi-word search. So Canada and flowers. We'll bring in that PDF that got OCR'd and a lot of items from wildflowers of Western Canada. So it does use, it does search some things, it does not search others. For instance, if we wanted to look for Canadian Museum of Civilization, it does not include too much. I'm fairly sure that this must have been from the OCR rather than, yeah, it was in the OCR. We do have things, as was clear when we were searching on wildflowers, some things are from the Canadian Museum of Civilization. So that was, for instance, this newspaper data set. But when we put it in the search box, it doesn't work because those things are indexed as strings so that they can be faceted on. They are not indexed as full text, so they can be searched on. So that's another issue that we can take a look at. We will take a look at later. Right, so that's why I was talking about taxonomy terms not yet indexed. All right, so another thing that is really important with how this install profile works is that there are, we already had a system model field, which you could check audio, video, binary, compound, etc. That was an Islandora field. This adds a requirement for the resource type metadata field to be filled out, and what it's set to helps determine presentation. So this is an interesting choice. I think there is some work going on to try to remove that. That requirement and that use of that. So you can still use it as you wish, but it won't drive the behavior of the site. There are a lot of features that are tied into the theme or hard-coded, and it can be hard to extract these. We are working on what we can, but we're using, we think that this is a cut above, like this is a big step forward in terms of our old sandbox that had the cats in it. So some issues with search, and I haven't figured out how to add full web VTT transcripts in a way that they're like fully integrated with the site. So even having closed caption tracks on players, or having a clickable transcript like you may have seen in other repositories, that doesn't happen yet. And it might just be a fact that it hasn't been like set up to. Noah, if you have any corrections there, please let me know.
I think that's correct. Some of those contexts need to be changed in the install profile so that that behavior comes out of the box also.
Okay, yeah.
That's a good, relatively smaller task to put on the roadmap.
Yeah, yeah. And in terms of an evaluator experience, I don't want to poo-poo this too much, because what you're seeing is something that has a lot of extra work done on top of the Islandora baseline in order to give good look and feel and good like responsive characteristics. So if this is something that you are interested in using, it is all open. It's the install profile demo is under the Islandora DevOps GitHub repo. And according to Noah, pardon me for paraphrasing, what you're getting is very, very close to a developer baseline installation before any work is done customizing to your special metadata fields or your own personal look and feel. What you're getting will be something very close to this. So it's if this is something that you like, if you find that it meets your needs in a lot of ways, shouldn't be too afraid to use it as a start to build your site on. Of course, we have a number of vendors in the sphere, and digital, Born Digital isn't the only one. All of them probably have something that's like kind of on par with this in terms of its own look and feel and customizations and stuff. You'll have to take a look with them to see. So I finally wanted to talk about the developer experience a little bit, because when we talked about the sandbox, that we wanted something that was constantly refreshing, we ended up developing something that is really more of a test box. Once it's being refreshed daily, we're really at the mercy of a lot of other software and other things that might not make it load up properly every day, which is what we're hoping that it will do. If you want to, sorry, 1 second. So the install profile does do things in its very specific way. And when it does this, it takes over a lot of the code and a lot of the config that gets loaded up in other feature modules such as Islandora defaults. So that makes it, on one hand, easier to update, because you know exactly what you're going to be getting when you load up that module. On the other hand, what it means is that we still don't have a place where changes to Islandora defaults can be made visible, can be seen, and can be tested. So if we're a developer and we want to make some changes to Islandora defaults or any of the other modules, loading up this install profile will not necessarily make it possible for us to do the testing that we need to do on those other modules. So there's also work being done, thanks to Nat Kieran, on the standard Islandora. And that's what I was talking about earlier as like the baseline Islandora that doesn't have the install profile. It uses more module-based code. Some of those modules were mentioned in the Sprint update. So it tries not to clobber over configs quite so much. And there is one right now at demo2.islandora.ca, but that is not a forever link. That might be going away because it is costing through DigitalOcean a number of dollars per month. Again, there's the January open meet, the last
Hearing you-
open meeting slides.
Hearing you talk through that, Rosie, it occurs to me that I wonder if we just change some order of operations and, for example, install the configs out of the Islandora defaults at the last second rather than earlier on in the process, or maybe even in addition to earlier on, if we could get the behavior you're looking for, which is that Islandora defaults wins.
I'm not sure that that's necessarily,
It's not the full picture of what you're looking
it's
for.
not the full picture of what we're looking for as developers, but
it
it,
would give you the, if you make a change to Islandora defaults, it changes the sandbox behavior that you're thinking of.
yeah, I'm
Yeah.
not sure about that. I'd need
Okay.
a chance to think on that, because I do think it's a little bit, it's confusing when you've got these two sets of configs that in some way that's not necessarily 100% in either direction. And so thinking about how that could happen and what basically what kind of experience are we trying to grant here? Is this something for somebody to open Islandora just out of the box and see what it's like, what it's doing? Or is this something that maybe a novice site builder would be interested in using as the basis of their site, or an expert site builder? What would they use as their basis? Or as, you know, somebody who has to go and click the code and test the stuff, test the pull requests. How does that happen? All right, I think that's where I end.